engagement, we do things like the I Spy Nature Walk, Kids in Nature Day. In enjoyment, we've had some kayaking events up on Mountain Island Lake. One of the things that we promote that's part of our mission is to create a wildlife habitat. There are just a few things that you need, and this yard illustrates that very well. You need food, which can be in the form of natural food like acorns. You see the pollinator plants right here. A water source, whether it's a natural water source or one that you provide like a bird bath. Shelter would be trees and shrubbery. Of course, the animals need a place to raise their young. That can also be natural or man-made. So it can be your trees, your bushes, bird houses, that sort of thing. And then we advocate for sustainable practices, which would be things like composting, putting in a water barrel, not using or severely decreasing your use of pesticides and herbicides, because those will keep the insects out, which really are a big draw for a lot of the other wildlife. So one of the things that Charlotte Wildlife Stewards is doing right now to encourage certified wildlife habitats is having just a small contest. These cute little moss-covered birdhouses were donated to us by Wild Birds Unlimited. And on our website, which you can see the link below, we have a tab that says Charlotte's Own Stories. For those of you that have certified wildlife habitats or in the process of doing it, we want you to send in up to 3 photos and a brief write-up of your habitat. And we have 10 of these birdhouses. So the first 10 of those that we get will receive a birdhouse. Now, a disclaimer is that you do need to be in the Charlotte area because, we have to be able to physically get these to you. So we hope that you will be sharing those with us. So how can you become involved in Charlotte Wildlife Stewards? You can volunteer at one of our events, which of course right now are suspended. We're not having any in-person events, but when we do, we always need volunteers to help us. You can participate in our events and our contests, just like the one I talked about. You can join one of our chapter committees. We have several, and if you're interested in that, you can email us and we will get back with you and talk more about that. Or if you want to have more of a voice, you can join our board. We do a lot of planning as well as executing some of the events. You can also join our chapter, Charlotte Wildlife Stewards. You would do that through the National Wildlife Federation. And there is it's a $25 membership fee, and those proceeds go to help both North Carolina Wildlife Federation and Charlotte Wildlife Stewards carry out our mission. The other thing is just to donate, whether you donate time, money, resources, we welcome all of that. So you may want to know what would be the advantage of joining Wildlife Stewards. There are a few things. The Wild Wire is a newsletter that comes out monthly that has lots of good information about what's going on in North Carolina with wildlife. Also lists all the events that are happening in the chapters statewide. You get a publication, it's the North Carolina Wildlife Federation Journal, has lots of great articles in it. That comes out, I'm not sure if it comes out every other month or every quarter, but it's a great resource. We also, our chapter has a few members only events to kind of encourage membership. In the past, we have had 2 kayaking events, 2 behind the scenes tours at the Raptor Center, and one that I'll talk about in just a minute is about building a bluebird house. And you get opportunities to network with other nature lovers, other chapters. There's some terrific people out there that are involved in Charlotte Wildlife Stewards as well as the other chapters in our area. You also get bragging rights. You get to say that you support wildlife. So we hope that you will think about that. You would just go to ncwf.org, click on the button that says join and renew. And then one thing you need to make sure of, there's a drop-down box to pick your chapter, and you would pick Charlotte Wildlife Stewards. We do want to thank our sponsors. They help us carry out what we do. Wild Birds Unlimited, as I mentioned, have donated those moss-covered birdhouses, and Honeybee Real Estate has been a huge backer of our Kids in Nature Day, which hopefully we'll be able to have again in October. We'll just have to see. Some upcoming programs and events. We had initially scheduled a Build a Bluebird House workshop, but we've decided we're not going to do any in-person events, at least through the end of March, maybe longer. But what we do have available are, we will have some Bluebird House kits available for pickup. There is a Facebook and Instagram post about this. You would go on there and register through that post. Our I Spy event we were going to have this month has also been canceled, but you can do it yourself. Go out in the woods, look, you know, just open your eyes. There's so much to see in the winter because you don't have leaves and plants obscuring everything. So I would encourage you to get out and do that. We'll be having a book group read that will kick off on the 15th of this month. So do look on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter pages. There will be information there about what we're going to read. Our March program, our February program is on February 9th. Lenny Lempel of the Parks and Recs is going to talk to us about insects in our environment and what a great part of our environment they are and how we really depend on them. And last, what I'll mention is the Love Nature trash cleanup. This is part of North Carolina Wildlife Federation's Trees for Trash program. There will be more information coming out about that, so you'll need to check, again, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and our website. We're going to kick it off on February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. So I hope you will participate in that. And now we're going to turn it over to Ernie to introduce Martina, our speaker for tonight.
All right. Thank you, Donna. Martina, I've known her for quite a while. I worked with her at Wild Birds Unlimited in the Charlotte store. And she's become our bird encyclopedia / nerd because of all that she knows about birds out there. It's really quite incredible. She is currently a student of biology, wildlife biology at NC State University. She lives in Indian Trail, North Carolina. She is an avid and very talented photographer. She is also an artist, and she's had a bird life list for quite some time, and it's almost scary to say this, but Martina, in her short lifetime, has seen 591 different species of birds that she's been able to identify. I don't know many lifelong birders that are able to say that. So you're in for a treat to hear her stories. A lot of the photography you'll be seeing will be from her. I'm sure she'll explain if she has not taken that picture, but we're going to ask too that you save questions. You can write them in the chat screen or just save them at last to the end and raise your hand, and Martina will take your questions at that time. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our speaker, Martina Nordstrand. So have at it, Martina. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ernie. Let me go ahead and get this started. Thank you, everybody, for logging in. I will say this is the biggest audience I've ever had for a bird talk, so I really appreciate it. So yeah, we're going to go over probably North America's favorite backyard bird, and if I had to guess anyway, bluebirds. So we're going to start out with what are bluebirds exactly. So this is sort of a simple family tree It's very simplified, but basically, bluebirds are part of a group of birds known as thrushes. So that includes some familiar birds like American robins that you see hopping around in your backyard, hermit thrushes, which are a winter resident we have, wood thrushes, which are a summer resident, and veeries, which are migrating thrushes. They don't breed in our part of North Carolina. So they're somewhat closely related, say cousins to finches and nuthatches and chickadees. So they're all considered passerines or songbirds. So one of the ways you can tell a bluebird or is a thrush is basically they're common but not typically feeder birds. So again, we've got a lot of robins. Many of you probably have hermit thrushes in your backyard now. But many of them don't really visit feeders. Bluebirds are usually the exception, and every once in a while a hermit thrush or a robin will visit a feeder. Their diet is mostly insects and berries, and they often have spotted breasts. So we'll go on a little bit later talking about baby bluebirds, but thrushes at any point in their life, whether it be like adults, like these thrushes down here, the wood thrushes, veeries, and hermit thrushes, or as just immatures like in robins and bluebirds, have spotted breasts. So that's kind of a key to how you know they're in the thrush family. And they're typically strong singers. So robins you'll hear singing at 2 a.m., probably waking you up. Bluebirds have a pretty strong song, and all of these wood thrushes, hermit thrushes, and veeries have what I consider to be some of the most pretty songs in North America. They're not really like outstanding in terms of color, but they've got some great songs. So today we're going to be talking about the eastern bluebird, but there are actually 3 species of bluebirds across North America. We've got the western bluebird, which is, as you can imagine, the western counterpart to the eastern. They look a little bit more different. They've got some blue on the throat and some red on the back, where our bluebirds only have a reddish throat and a blue back. And then we have the brilliant mountain bluebird, which is found mostly in the interior west, like the Rocky Mountains, like Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, like up to eastern Washington, California. So they live up to their names. They like mountains. And all 3 species are very similar in that they will use bluebird boxes. So I'm sure we don't have any people, watching from out west. But if we do, you have mountain bluebirds and western bluebirds. And for the most part, most of the advice is about the same across the 3 species. So eastern bluebirds have had a pretty interesting history, especially when it comes to people. Back in about the early 1900s, they started to get really threatened by European starlings, which are an invasive species from Europe, as well as house sparrows, which is the real baddie for them, which both these invasive species will take over nesting cavities, kick bluebirds out, but house sparrows will actually kill nestlings, eggs, and even adults if they can trap them inside. So a lot of these potential nesting spots got just taken over by all these invasive species. So between 1920 and 1970, in 50 years, the population dropped by 90%. Also, I would mention that DDT was a pretty big factor for them as well, because since DDT was a pesticide, it killed a lot of insects that bluebirds ate, but also bluebirds were affected, like many other birds, through the DDT building up in their system. So their eggs became a lot more fragile. Bluebirds could not lay as many eggs. And even though a bluebird is very light, weighing only a few ounces, these eggs would be so fragile that they would just crack underneath the mother or the father. So thankfully, due to human intervention, bluebirds have bounded back dramatically. They're probably now as abundant as they have ever been, even before settlers arrived in North America. They are the 14th most common winter feeder bird in 2016 to 2017, thanks to, I think that was a great backyard bird count. but yeah, they are just doing fantastic right now, and they do really well with humans, as many of us know. They like our suburban yards. They love the boxes that we put out for them. They love visiting the feeders we put out for them as well. So they do really well with humans, and humans tend to really want them around. So bluebirds are fairly social. So the basic unit is the mated pair. So this is would be a male and a female, and this bond is sometimes lifelong. We'll get to that in a second, but for the most part, it's a pair. They get very territorial during breeding season, which would be about late February through about, I would say, August or so. And the pairs get very territorial. So you'll often see in early spring males fighting other males, and females will fight other females, and it looks really bad. Usually they can't hurt each other too bad, but you'll see two bluebirds wrestling on the ground, pecking at each other. Things get very heated with them. But bluebirds, so their pair is often lifelong, but they do cheat. And up to 30% of bluebird nests contain eggs from more than one father. So many of us might be surprised to learn that a lot of birds actually cheat. It's sort of a genetic, in the female bird's eyes, she wants her offspring to have as many, to be as diverse as possible. So sometimes, and it goes both ways, males will find other females. So it's interesting, but for the most part, pairs cooperate. Even if the father knows that those aren't exactly all his eggs, he'll still cooperate because some of those are his eggs. And during fall and winter, bluebirds sort of drop the whole territorial craziness, and they get very cooperative. So this photo was taken during winter. This one's not mine, but definitely you can see there's 5 bluebirds here that are not obviously fighting or squabbling. I know many of you probably, especially during snow and ice, will see tons of bluebirds visiting your feeders. In the winter, they have nothing to squabble about other than maybe some food, but you can often see very large flocks roaming around in the winter. So bluebirds in the wild live to be about 6 to 8 years old. And like most songbirds, their mortality is pretty high, up to 40%. And juvenile mortality is much higher. It's hard being a baby bird in this world. Lots of predators out there. Probably the top one would be cats, just because bluebirds live so close to humans usually. Feral cats are one of the biggest issues they face, but that also includes things like raptors, so like sharp-shinned hawks will take them out, Cooper's hawks. Sometimes if a raccoon gets into the nest, it can grab the chicks or eggs, snakes in the nest, and other mammalians such as foxes. Less common, but a lot of things will eat a bluebird if they get the chance. So we have 3 basics, and this is sort of follows actually the National Wildlife Federation's certifying your habitat, basically. So like every other animal on this planet, bluebirds need food, water, and a place to shelter or raise their young. So we start with food. So if you're going to stop by Wild Birds Unlimited, like where Ernie and I are, or anywhere else, a lot of other birds do like sunflower chips, including bluebirds, but usually bluebirds will not come into just this. The silver medal goes to bark butter, which is what the brand name at our store, but anything that's spreadable suet. So this is sort of like similar to peanut butter, but it's a higher fat content. And you can spread it onto trees, feeders like this one here that are specialized, or even on the sides of other feeders. And it is also available in a nugget form. So some people call these bluebird nuggets. And these are very popular with bluebirds. Again, it's a very soft food that bluebirds can eat. They don't have to worry or work hard to get to this food. And a lot of other birds like it too. I've got lots of woodpeckers. I get kinglets. Even my cardinals fight over this. So you actually will sometimes get other interesting birds, such as black and white warblers, or I've gotten a customer who swears by this for her orioles in the winter, so which are both insect-eating birds. So this is bark butter is always a good option. And of course, as you might imagine, for an insect-eating bird, live mealworms gets the gold medal. Definitely the most favorite food for bluebirds. Of course, I know we'll go over mealworm frequently asked questions in a bit, but live is going to be way preferred than dried. That being said, bluebirds will eat dried if you sort of have to coerce them into it. But definitely the main drawback is it's sometimes a little too attractive. And you will sometimes get some competition with other birds such as Carolina wrens and mockingbirds who might also want some snacks. So I've got a couple questions. So about how many mealworms should I feed? So 1 to 2 dozen mealworms is perfect. And you can store mealworms. So where do you store mealworms? I store them in the fridge. That keeps them dormant. They're still alive, but not moving around a lot. And you can put a small slice of carrot, apple, or potato, something that's not super wet, in their container, so that way they have something to munch on. They're still alive, they still need water and food, but they don't need a lot of it, so that's a good way to keep them alive. And then I included this one, how do you get over the icky factor? One way is you can store them in a container that's not clear, and you can usually manage to feed them without touching them. So I usually, I mean, I'm not grossed out by them, but I recommend that, use a plastic spoon or something, so that way you don't have to touch them if you're weirded out by them. And, just keep them in a little corner of the fridge so you don't have to look at them. And the mealworms are harmless. They're just hard-shelled. They're not slimy or anything. So they're just little worms. And the bluebirds love them. They'll thank you for it. You can actually train your bluebirds. Now, Ernie will back me up on this. Ron, the previous owner of our store, actually trained his bluebirds to come in to a call. So every time he went outside, he would play this bluebird call and put out the mealworms. And eventually the bluebirds would come out like out of nowhere every time he played this call. So it sort of works as like a little dinner bell. So you can use a bell or a whistle or anything every time you put the mealworms out, and eventually the bluebirds are going to pick up on it. They're very smart and come out when they hear that there's food being served. And sometimes if you are very, very patient, they will feed out of your hand. And then another question I get a lot of is, can you feed mealworms in winter? And yes, it is a great time to feed right now. There's not a lot of other insects around, and bluebirds definitely need the extra food. And then another question I also get a lot is, where should you place it? Some people put it on their bluebird box or around it, but I usually recommend you can keep it with your other feeders if you've got them, or on its own. So that way you don't get a bunch of birds too close to the bluebird box, which can stress out the parents. And speaking of other birds, we do sell bluebird feeders that have a 1.5-inch hole that the bluebirds can fit through, but other larger birds can't. That's really the only way you can prevent other birds from eating the mealworms. And it doesn't work for smaller birds like Carolina wrens. So I usually recommend just feeding a small amount and make sure that your bluebirds, it's always helpful to train them so that way the bluebirds are going to get it first before, say, your wrens or mockingbirds. Now the second thing is water, and probably the easiest way to introduce water, especially for birds, is a bird bath. All your birds are going to benefit from this, not just bluebirds, and especially during the winter. So if you've got a bird bath outside right now, I know it's not been super cold, but it freezes every once in a while. we do at the store. We do carry bird bath heaters, but you can get them online as well. That's really helpful for keeping the water liquid instead of a big frozen block. Plus, if you've got glass or cement bird baths, that's really nice. So hopefully prevents the water from freezing and cracking your bird bath. And I also really like dripper misters. So this is what this little contraption is here. It hooks up to your hose and it either puts out a mist of water or a single drip of water every couple seconds. The moving water is really attractive to all your birds. And I know my bluebirds go crazy for the drip. It's just a little sound of moving water, but they love it. And in the summer, it also prevents mosquitoes from laying eggs, which is always good, especially if you don't want mosquitoes in your yard. And then hopefully you guys are going to learn this hands-on with your bluebird box building. But the most important thing for a bluebird house is the hole size. You don't want anything smaller or anything larger than 1.5 inches. Anything smaller will be just too small for the bluebirds. Other birds can use it if you accidentally make it too small, like chickadees, but unfortunately bluebirds will not. And anything larger can get, unfortunately, European starlings. European starlings are a bit bigger than bluebirds, so having a 1.5-inch hole will prevent the bigger birds, the bigger starlings, from getting in there. Unfortunately, does not deter house sparrows, but we'll get to that. Now, this is what the Bluebird Society recommends. I know not all of our boxes follow this exact floor and depth plan. I've heard deeper is better if you want to prevent sparrows, but I'm not sure on that. I have to double check, but I think the width and the depth are not as important as the hole size. Bluebirds are very versatile. They're not super picky. For materials, wood, like pine or cedar, or we have these recycled plastic ones are always good. And then you want to put it about 4 to 10 feet off the ground. We recommend that you keep your feeders on a pole instead of like a tree or a fence post, because poles will make it harder for predators to get up into. If it's on a tree or a fence, it'll be a lot harder to prevent things like raccoons and snakes from getting in there and attacking your bluebirds. And then a couple of, additional features if you want to have a really nice, little bluebird mansion. Some bluebirds boxes will come with a glass door that opens up on the side so you can view the nest, see how it's going. We even carry one that has a camera. So if you have a bluebird cam, if you want to get a bluebird cam, we actually carry one at the store. And if you do, that would be really cool to share. But also some have a metal grid on the inside to help with grip, and a reinforced hole, so that way things like squirrels won't chew it open, or woodpeckers. So that's always nice. So now, where to place your boxes? So like I said, try to avoid fence posts or trees. Anything that's sort of a semi-open grassland habitat, which is actually a lot. It's most of your lawns, most of your suburbs. Bluebirds do find in. They don't need a lot of trees. And unfortunately, if you do have a very heavily wooded backyard, it might be a little difficult to get bluebirds in, just because they like to have some open space. So meadows, lawns, cemeteries, orchards, anywhere that's got some open space with a few trees. They don't need trees, but they like trees. Anything like that is perfect. And of course, if you already see bluebirds in your backyard, you know that, okay, you have the habitat for them. And yeah, so fence lines, medium-sized trees, and telephone lines are good because they provide perches. So if you've got any of those in the area, your house also works. You'll notice that bluebirds like to sit somewhere, watch, and then they'll fly down, catch something, and bring it back. So they like to have places they can survey. Now, if you put up your bluebird box, and no box has used the box for 2 years or 2 seasons, it might be worth trying a different placement. Of course, sometimes you might get other birds getting to it first, like chickadees or titmice. So maybe not necessarily a bluebird problem, but more of a competitive problem. But definitely, if you're noticing nobody's using the box, you can always move it. And a good thing to add is a predator guard. So there's a couple different predator guards you can get that vary from wire cages or something that looks like a wire cage that goes on the outside to baffles on poles. It depends on your setup, so definitely research, if you're going to put it on a pole, are you going to put it on a tree, where you're going to put it. There are different predator guards for every situation, but definitely that will prevent snakes or chipmunks or raccoons or cats from getting up on the box and getting to your baby bluebirds. And then if you've got 2 bluebird boxes, say, during your bluebird box building, your neighbor all of a sudden gives you a free one, a gift. Unfortunately, in most yards, if you put both boxes up, you're not going to get 2 bluebirds. What's probably going to happen is you're going to get another bird moving into one box and a bluebird moving into the other box. So it doesn't hurt to put more than one box up, but just keep your expectations to one bluebird family. Unfortunately, they're so territorial that they do not like sharing. But you might get something like chickadees or wrens moving in, so that's always nice to have 2 families in the yard. So we've got these 9 little nesting phases. So this is what to expect when you're expecting. Here's a cute little baby bluebird. I know he's so ugly, he's cute. A little fluff ball. So we're going to start when you say you just have your box out for a couple weeks. We're going to start with courtship. So you see, say, a pair of bluebirds in your backyard. The male will often bring the female a little gift. In this case, it's a little mealworm. This is not my photo. She hopefully accepts it, and they're going to go ahead and start investigating a box. So I always like to use holidays. Have your nest boxes out by Valentine's. So that's nice, mid-February. This is about when our local bluebirds start looking. So they both investigate houses. So you'll see, this is a female bluebird poking her head in. You'll see male bluebirds also doing the same. But it's the female that makes the final decision. So the male will be nice and proud. He thinks he'll have found the perfect bluebird box. But if she doesn't like it, they're not staying in it. So you will see bluebirds going in and out of the box, poking their heads in. Sometimes even the male will put in nest material. He won't build a whole nest quite yet, but it's believed he's sort of showing the female, like, hey, this is what it could look like. So sometimes you'll see a couple twigs in there already, but maybe not get any actual nest. So it takes them a couple of weeks to really decide, and they also have to fight off other birds that are competing. Such as chickadees and wrens, and some places might have tree swallows or even woodpeckers. They all will compete for boxes. But bluebirds are pretty tough. So hopefully now your bluebirds have chosen your box, and they've started to build a nest, and hey, now they've laid eggs. This would happen in about March or so, maybe mid to late March. So how to know you've got a bluebird nest instead of anyone else's is they've got a very neat looking nest. It looks like your classic bird nest. So it's woven of mostly fine grass or pine needles, just only like vegetation. They don't use fur or feathers or anything like that. Well, on occasion anyway, but you'll see in this nest here, it's mostly just grasses. And it doesn't look very messy, and it's not full of fur. And it's a pretty deep nest. It can be a couple inches tall. And the bluebird eggs are beautiful little powder blue. So to bring back from earlier, if you've ever heard of robin's egg blue, it's about the same color, and it makes sense because they're both thrushes. Thrushes tend to lay these beautiful little blue eggs. Sometimes on occasion you'll actually see white eggs. So I'm going to go back and forth between this slide here a little bit and this slide. So house sparrow is the one that you do not want. No circumstances do not let a house sparrow nest because they're not native, and they can hurt your bluebirds if they're if they decide to take over the nest. So their nest looks super messy. They use trash in there. They use grass, feathers, twigs. I mean, it's just a total mess. It can be, and it'll fill up the whole box. It even has like this one mentions a tunnel-like entrance. So the eggs are usually cream or white with speckles on them. So if you do get a house sparrow nest, and of course be certain that you have house sparrows, this is the only nest you can legally remove. All the other birds on this list are native, so therefore you cannot mess with their nests or their eggs. So understand, if you do get, say, a family of chickadees in the box and you were hoping for bluebirds, well, maybe in a couple months the chickadees will move out and the bluebirds will move in, but you can't do anything about that. And you just, all the other birds are fun anyway. It's always nice to have birds in the yard. But house sparrows are not one you want. So tree swallows, which we do not have a whole lot of in the Charlotte area, but they are increasing. Their nest is actually very beautiful. It's a nest of grass, and this is their photo here. It's a nest of grass that is lined with these big, beautiful feathers. So tree swallows are very acrobatic, and they actually pluck these feathers off the water, or like from geese or ducks, or on the edges of the banks, and they line their nests with all these feathers, and they've got little white eggs. So if you take a look in the box and you see this nest full of feathers, you've got a tree swallow. Chickadees and titmice are both very similar nests. Both of their nests use a lot of fur. So if you put out alpaca wool, or say if you've just shampooed your dog with bird safe shampoo, I think it's like non-pesticide or non-insecticide, non-flea killing shampoo, and make sure it's organic. And you can put that extra fur out, and sometimes the chickadees will use it. So this is they don't have a picture of that one. I thought I had included a picture, but they use a lot of moss, fur, and some plant fibers like grasses. So if you peek in the box and you see a lot of moss in there, then you've got a chickadee or a titmouse. Both their eggs are white with brownish speckles. And then house wrens, which is this middle one here, they have the worst nest in my opinion. It's usually made up of big old twigs. It looks kind of like a maze in there, or like a little jungle. I don't know how they keep it clean, but they use it's just big and twiggy. They don't use a whole lot of fine grasses like bluebirds do, and they lay a bunch of little eggs, these little brownish eggs. So they're one of the more likely birds to take over a bluebird nest. So the timeline for bluebirds, so nest building takes about 2 to 6 days. Both parents build the nest. Egg laying is 5 to 7 days, depending on how many eggs are going to be in the clutch, and it's usually 1 egg per day. So what that means basically is that as your baby bluebirds hatch, there's going to be a largest and a smallest. It'll be the first egg to be laid will be the oldest to the youngest. So if you've got 5 babies, you'll have largest down to the smallest. And then incubation is usually 12 to 14 days, so about 2 weeks, a little under 2 weeks. And hatching usually occurs within 24 hours. So all the babies tend to hatch within about the same time period. And fledging varies from 16 to 24 days. And then broods, they have up to 1 to 4 broods or clutches per year. So if your bluebirds get a big head start, like this coming year, say that you put your bluebird box up like tomorrow, and your bluebirds will hopefully start nesting in it by late February, they can nest all the way to August or into September. So if you've got a very productive pair of bluebirds, they can have up to 4 clutches of babies in a year. So this is a video of a short video of them hatching. So this is one of the parents. I got this from a Bluebird cam. I don't remember quite where. I think it was Virginia. But here's a little ugly baby. They are not cute. And mom will sit on them to keep them warm. So the babies, as you can see, are quite ugly and naked. They don't start getting cute until a little later. A good mom, she's fluffing up. Then you can see a couple days later, babies are still blind and helpless. So the parents would bring them a lot of soft food. And like we mentioned actually in the beginning intro, this is why it's so good to have insects in your yard. Bluebirds need insects to feed their babies as well as almost all other birds in your yard. Baby birds can't digest seeds. They need soft, juicy insects for them to eat. Here they are, a little bit older. And so mom and dad both bring them food, up to I think a couple hundred times a day. And it consists of insects such as mostly ground-dwelling insects, so worms, caterpillars, anything that they can find. They also fly catch, so flies, moths, rarely butterflies. So yeah, mom's being good, keeping them warm. I always love when they do that. They do the cute little shuffle. Now here, this is probably about 2 weeks later, or maybe a week and a half later. Big old cute little baby bluebirds. You can see they look sort of spotty. This is all in black and white, but that one's pretty hungry. And here's dad. But you see this is right before they fledge. So you can see that their wing here, the guy who's just stretching it, looks nice and completely formed. He's grown all the feathers he needs to start flying. So these babies are going to be fledging any day now. So that's sort of what goes on inside your Bluebird box. But what do you do afterwards? So definitely good while the Bluebirds are using it, good idea to keep an eye on it about once a week, just to make sure everything's okay. They can get infestations of things like bird mites or other parasites. And you want to make sure that nothing's happened to them, such as like, a predator like a snake getting in. So from the Bluebird Society, they advise cleaning out the nest box either after each brood or at the end of nesting season. So I usually, unless it was like a beginner parent pair and it was a really messy nest, I usually wait till the end of the season to clean, just because I feel like messing with the box sometimes can discourage birds from using it. So I try to keep it. I try to leave the birds alone. But if there's a real issue, such as a parasite infestation, or it's just really dirty, I'll clean it out. And sometimes if bluebirds have a nest failure, for example, if a snake just comes in and eats all their eggs, or none of the eggs hatch or anything like that, it will entice the bluebirds to retry nesting. So if something goes wrong, clean it out and hopefully they can try again. And there's a myth that some people believe that if you monitor too much, it'll cause the bluebirds to abandon their nest. This is not true. I will say there is such a thing as over-monitoring. You don't want to check it every single day, just because that causes a lot of stress to the birds. As you might imagine, if a giant came over and looked, opened up your house and took a look inside at your kids, you'd not be very pleased. But it will not chase off the bluebirds. Bluebirds are very good parents. They're not going to abandon their chicks or eggs just because you poked your head in for a little bit. But the Bluebird Society did mention it's good to avoid monitoring early in the morning because this is the most active time for bluebirds. So it might be a good time to check in the afternoon or evenings, just to be sure. So here's some troubleshooting. The most common one is my bluebirds failed at nesting. Well, unfortunately, almost half or over half of bluebird nests fail in the wild. So if you have bluebirds in the area and they did try nesting, they will return and try again. Now, if it's near the end of the season, they might not try again, but if it's up to about July. If their nest fails, they will come back and try again. The next one is predators can get to the box. So we recommend at the store, again, I don't want to plug the store too much, but we sell a Bluebird box pole. So there's a metal pole that you can get with a predator baffle to attach to it. So the baffle will keep snakes, raccoons, cats, squirrels from getting up the pole, and keep your bluebirds safe. So other predators, such as cats, so try to keep your cats indoors, pretty please, not just for the bluebirds, but for everything else, including, your small mammals and reptiles. So yeah, keep your cats indoors. If there are other birds harassing the bluebirds, it might be, if you have feeders set up, just might be a good idea to move the feeders or take them down for a little bit to prevent that from happening. But if there's nothing, if the bluebirds haven't taken over the box, there's not a lot you can do about it. Sometimes it's up to the bluebirds to chase off their competitors, and if the competitors win, well, that's sort of nature that happens all the time. And unfortunately, there's not very much you can do about hawks or other raptors. If anything to deter a raptor would deter your bluebirds. So if other birds are using your box, if they are house sparrows, you can legally remove and destroy the nest and the eggs. Again, please do that because we do not want more house sparrows. They're detrimental to bluebirds and other birds. Otherwise, like I said, you sort of have to be happy with your new bird family. Chickadees are pretty cute. So in titmice and wrens. So while they're not bluebirds, they are still fun to watch, and you're at least helping them out. If you think your parent bluebirds have abandoned their young, unfortunately or fortunately, this is almost always wrong. Bluebirds are very good parents. They can be gone for long periods of time, but they will not. They will never abandon their young unless something bad has happened to the parents. So if you haven't seen your bluebirds for a couple hours, don't worry. But if you haven't seen your bluebirds for a couple days, then you should worry. If you found a baby bluebird outside the nest, what do you do? Rest assured, parents are going to be nearby, and they're just going to take care of it. This is nature. And again, I don't think I have to preach it too much to you guys. You guys live out, you actually, enjoy nature. But a lot of people who don't know anything about birds, very commonly at the store, we get a lot, I saw this baby bird on the ground and it couldn't fly. What do I do? Well, if it's got feathers on it, it's a fledgling and it's doing what it's doing, which is trying to learn how to fly. So just leave it alone. The parents will take care of it. If it's in any danger, maybe you can move the bird, maybe move it to, say, a nearby hedgerow or something. But try not to move it too far. And if the birds will not abandon their baby if you touch it. And if you find an injured bluebird, you can contact a local wildlife rehabber. I would recommend Carolina Waterfowl Rescue unless somebody else. I don't know of any other bird rescues in Charlotte. So the Carolina Waterfowl Rescue will take them in Indian Trail. And this goes for other birds too. So if you find another bird that's injured, they will take in small birds, not raptors. If your nestlings seem sick, there are a lot of causes, and I will link this at the end. Cialis.org is the Bluebird Society's website. And if you have any other questions after this about bluebirds, that is the website to go to if you want to just read. And then this is going to be an issue in probably a couple weeks that we're going to hear about, is bluebirds attacking the reflection in windows. This is very typical of bluebirds, especially males who are now in about a month or so going to be full of testosterone. What happens is they see a reflection and they think it's another bird. Another handsome-looking bird that will not get out of his territory. So he will keep pecking at your window until he gets tired or you get tired and chase him off. So some solutions include preventing the reflection. So there's like stickers you can put in the most reflective areas, or even putting like a netting over your windows, or even scaring birds away, which I would not recommend if you want bluebirds. But there's like owl decals, or hanging glittery balloons that you can put outside that will scare them off. But I would not recommend that if you want bluebirds. So for further information, I would write these down. So cialis.org is the best, by far the best. It's like a encyclopedia of bluebird knowledge. If you have an issue with bluebirds, this is where you go. There's also the NA bluebirdsociety.org, so that's the North American Bluebird Society. Then if you ncbluebird.org is the North Carolina Bluebird Society. And then I also put mecbirds.org, so kind of shout out to I'm sure many of us overlap with Mecklenburg Audubon. But if you're interested in seeing more than just bluebirds, Mecklenburg Audubon, many of our Audubon members are very knowledgeable on bluebirds as well. And allaboutbirds.com is all about birds, of course, in North America. But if there's a lot of, you can read up on bluebirds. They have a lot of bluebird information. If you want to watch videos, they've got a lot of information on birds. But yeah, I think that is it. I'm just going to keep it on this tab for a little bit so you can, if anyone wants to write those down, or just take a look at them. But yeah, thank you guys for listening to me ramble on about bluebirds for a while. Hope you liked it, and I'd be really happy to take your questions.
Thanks so much. This was amazing. I learned so much, and I will send all of you these links because I'm sure they would be very helpful for everyone.
Backyard, and I'm wondering what I should do next. So this was great. Thank you.
Awesome.
So much.
You can turn it to Linda next.
One thing. Is there a preferred direction in which you should aim the bluebird box opening?
So I get that question a lot, and for the most part, bluebirds don't really seem to have a preference. I've heard a lot that south or southeast facing is usually best, but in my experience, bluebirds don't care. Mainly because they can't afford to care. There's so many boxes out there that if they got so picky about that, they would never be able to nest. So I've heard south to southeast, but it's not a huge preference. It won't make or break you getting bluebirds or not.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. We'll go to Tom D next.
Yeah, I've been looking at a couple of different birdhouse designs, and one was kind of interesting. He had sliced some cuts on the front of the inside front of the birdhouse to allow the baby birds to climb out. Have you ever heard of that? How do they get out?
Yeah, that's actually a nice little feature that you can look for in some of your boxes. Yeah, some boxes do have that pre-cut, or somebody will cut slots in there. At the store, we have a couple that have like a wire mesh that's like stapled to the wall, so it's like a little ladder. But yeah, they just use their little talons and can usually scrabble out of there pretty well. Now, I will say if your bluebird box doesn't have that, don't worry, because they still manage to get enough grip even on in a wooden box that they can get out. But it definitely helps to have some sort of grip there for them. That's always a nice little feature to have.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, I had Danya next on the list. Do you have a question, Danya, or are you all set?
Okay, I took my hand down because I was more or less wanting to correct a suggestion that we were not going to have a plan for the kids with I Spy, and we are. We're going to have virtual meetings with scavenger hunts and projects and books recommended and different things for them to do, so people can also look for iSpy virtually online. And I think that bluebirds have been just totally fascinating. I have more than I've ever had before, and this just makes me feel good about it. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
That's
Sonia.
awesome.
We have a question from Monty.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Martina, first of all, thank you for your presentation. I especially enjoyed the look inside the box.
Yeah.
Thing I've never seen before, so that was pretty cool. And I just wanted to ask you, there was a lot of good information on your slides. I wonder if we could get a copy of the actual slides.
Yeah, I can send that to Tara or Ernie to pass around. I can just I'll download it and email it to them. If that's good, Tara or Ernie.
Perfect.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Add as well that the webinar was recorded, so that recording will also be available on our YouTube channel soon.
Awesome.
Thank you, Madison. Perfect. And next we have Elizabeth. Elizabeth Apple.
I had two questions. Oh, excuse me. 2 years ago, I thought I had done the perfect box that had been used for several seasons. It's a box on a pole, on a baffle. Everything seemed to be going great. Reinforced hole. And then I was away, came back, and something had chewed all the way around the hole, great big hole. I was able to replace the reinforcement with a reinforcement with copper over it.
Okay.
Same box, also on the same pole with the same baffle, etc. What do I have to look out for? What was that thing that somehow chewed out that hole?
My first thought, since you have a baffle, was probably a woodpecker of some sort. Just because, unfortunately, woodpeckers, especially like the little downy woodpeckers, if they want to use a box, they like to make renovations to it. And it sometimes gets out of hand, which is why most of our boxes are sold with a sort of reinforcement, because, to make up for any chewing or to prevent them from pecking through it. That was my first thought, just because you have a baffle, and baffles should prevent squirrels. Squirrels are usually the second culprit, since they love to chew.
The reinforcement, it was like over a half an inch around it. So if it was woodpecker, will the copper reinforcement be hopefully solve that problem?
Yeah, nothing should be able to. If something's chewing through copper, then I would get that checked out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my second question is about suet. And I did not know whether this was a normal function that bluebirds do or whether mine just trained me. I had a suet feeder that had like little ledges on it, and it had a roof, and you could put 2 different suet cakes, one on each side. And I had accidentally just started trying an insect brand along with the type that I get, and came home one day to find bluebirds on the suet feeder. Since then, the same brand has come out with a mealworm.
Okay.
I can't tell whether they like it better or different, or whether they're the only ones eating it. Is suet okay for the bluebirds? I mean, if that's something that they like and they go for the insect.
Yeah, that's I didn't get to cover, I didn't want to take up too much time, but they do eat anything that's soft. So I mentioned the spreadable suet, but they like suet blocks just as much. And definitely it's a great, especially this time of year, great source of energy for them, since it's so full of fat. But yeah, suet is definitely very common.
Do they have to use one of those feeders with a ledge so that they're not like a nuthatch or a woodpecker that would hang on one of the little baskets?
Actually, they don't need it, although they definitely prefer it. Bluebirds are pretty agile. They can actually will hang on to edges. And you see that when they're using their boxes, they still have to cling to the entrance of their box. So they do know how to cling, but they definitely prefer to have a ledge that they can eat on. So it's a preference, and it will probably help attract them. But if you don't have a suet feeder that doesn't have it, don't fret. You still might be able to get bluebirds to it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good questions.
Yeah, it's great questions. We're going to Dee. Do you have another question for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I'm building a bird cam birdhouse right now, and I'm experimenting with the camera, little two-inch square camera, and I plan to put it online so that anybody can take a look at it. But I'll let you know when I get it all together, because kind of a neat little project. I'm still experimenting with the camera, but I expect to have it online pretty soon, probably the next couple of weeks.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, and I'll share it, and maybe now I'm guessing that Wild Birds Unlimited has a website and probably could accommodate something like that.
Yeah, I would say email Ernie, or there's a store email if you look us up online. And we can see. I'm not sure if we can host it or not, but we can see and try.
Yeah,
that would be great.
Well, when I get it up and working, it's mainly for my grandchildren who, many of them live a couple hundred miles away. So I wanted to be able to share it with them, and there's no reason I can't share it with, the world.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Yeah. Okay.
Tom, we could also share it on our Charlotte Wildlife Stewards social media if you want to share it with us.
Okay, I'll make sure that I do that.
Great. We have a question. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. Go ahead. Go for it.
Okay, I'm all done.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tom. We have a question from Margaret Sexton.
Not a question, only a comment. I know that some of the people over at the Gaston County Wildlife Paws, I know that I think John Cunningham has already, last year I know he was posting Bluebird cams and so forth, where he had one in his, so just a FYI for anybody. There are some out there.
Yes, thanks. That was a really great one to follow. We'll have to share that on the Charlotte Wildlife Stewards page, perhaps, so that you guys can share it around. I think that'd be pretty fun. Did anyone else have any more questions? If you do have a question, there's a little hand signal in the top right-hand corner of your screen if you're on a laptop. I have a question from Bill Willis.
Yes, this was a very good presentation. Let me get your comments on other occupants of bluebird houses, including the mud dauber and paper wasp, and what effect they have on the survival of the clutch.
Yes, I did not. I should have mentioned that in my presentation. But yes, some paper wasps and mud daubers will use bluebird boxes. If they are occupying a box, the bluebirds will not use it. So of course, be very cautious. I personally am not an insect person, so I can't tell you exactly how to take them out or anything like that. But I know to prevent them from using your box is you can rub, if you can get scentless wax or like even crayons, some people have told me, and rub it vigorously on the roof of the internal roof of the box. The wasps can't attach their nests to the wax. It's water, like they use water-based things, so the wax actually repels the water. So that works pretty well if you want to prevent wasps from taking over the box. But yeah, unfortunately, if they're in the box already, the bluebirds will not use them. As you can imagine, they probably would not want to be very close to a bunch of wasps. But good question.
Yes, I've tried soap, and I've also tried aluminum foil, and with limited success in both cases. But I was wondering whether if we left the paper wasp nest in there, since the paper wasp usually does not reuse the same one a second time, whether that would be deterrent to the insect population?
No, I don't think
Or would they
so.
put another nest? Okay.
Yeah, I don't, if it's already in there, I'm not, unfortunately, a 100% expert on wasps. But I'm not sure if they would use it again or not, like if they would move on.
Right, okay. Since you are a bird person, what about the cowbird effect? And
Yeah.
will the cowbirds be a problem with the 1.5 inch diameter nest box hole?
Cowbirds on occasion, I do believe they can fit into that 1.5 inch hole. So on occasion, they can be a problem with bluebirds. So for those of you who are not super into birds, cowbirds will lay an egg or two in other birds' nests, and oftentimes the cowbird baby will take over the nest and even kick out the host siblings. Now, with bluebirds, it's not a very common occurrence because they're in cavities. And cowbirds typically target birds that have open cup nests, usually like in shrubs. So think like cardinal or robin nests. So thankfully, not a huge problem with bluebirds. It's a very once in a while thing. So if you're ever out and checking your boxes and you notice the nest has, say 4 bluebird eggs and then 1 speckled white egg, that's probably a cowbird egg. So unfortunately, this is being recorded, so legally I cannot say that they are a protected species, so you can't hurt them. Some people may disagree with me, but for the record, they are native, so unfortunately you can't mess with them if they are becoming an issue. But thankfully, in terms of bluebirds, not a problem.
And it becomes an issue if you remove their egg, the cowbird can come by and destroy the rest of the clutch.
Yes.
Out of spite. Quote,
yes,
spite.
The Mafia effect is what I've heard it been called.
Yes.
Yes, so that's another, unfortunately, if you get a cowbird in your nest, and it's not a guarantee failure of the host, it just makes it a little tougher for the other ones to survive.
Right.
So, but yeah, very good question.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. And I don't see any more hands raised. We'll just give everyone one more second in case they want to raise a hand by clicking the little hand icon in the top right-hand corner. All right, I think Bill's all set. I see his hand raised again, but I think Bill's all set. If you're not Bill, you can unmute yourself right now.
One more question having to do with the nuthatches and their need from human success. Do you see the recovery of the nuthatch progressing as well as the bluebirds, or people keyed in on the nuthatch recovery like they are the bluebird?
I don't think so as much. So the nuthatches Bill is talking about are the brown-headed nuthatches, which are a southeastern specialty bird. They like pine trees, and they will use these little nest boxes. So they might be an occupant of a box if you put one out. And I don't see them being, they're still rather common around us, but they're definitely declining overall. I don't see them being catered for, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, as much as bluebirds. I think mostly because people don't know that much about them. They're not exactly the brightest or most colorful looking bird. They're adorable and they're cute and fun to watch. But also another thing is they are a little bit more picky about their habitats. So if you don't have any pine trees around your yard, you're probably not going to get any. So they're not like bluebirds, where bluebirds might be in every single yard, no matter what kinds of trees you have or what plants you're planting. As long as you've got a lawn and some places for them to perch, you probably have bluebirds. Nuthatches, on the other hand, tend to be a bit pickier about whose yard they're in. Like, I don't have nuthatches in my yard just because we don't have any pine trees. So if you do have pine trees, if you get brown-headed nuthatches in your backyard, definitely put a box out for them. But yeah, I don't see them being nearly as popular as the bluebirds.
Don't quote me, but they talk funny.
Oh yeah, they sound like little squeaky toys. They are
Yeah.
the cutest.
So you know where you have them.
I'm sorry?
You know if you
Yeah.
have them because of the squeaky duck.
Yes. If it sounds like you've got like a dog toy stuck up in your pine tree, then you know you've got brown-headed nuthatches.
Well, thank you very much, Bill. Those were some great questions. I don't see any more questions, so I think we're going to conclude. Thank you, Martina. This was amazing. I still remember the first time that we met at a coffee shop, and right in the middle of drinking coffee, she heard bird sounds, and we stopped talking in the middle of the conversation. And I think that just describes you. You are a bird lover and expert, and I have so much to learn from you, as I think all of us do. So thank you so much. I will turn this back over to Donna or Ernie if you guys would like to conclude with anything.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Martina. This was amazing. And you were amazing. So thank you very much. And I would just like to thank everyone who has tuned into our program and hope that you will join us on, what is that date? February 9th, I believe, when Lenny will be talking to us about insects and how important they are. And I mean, you just heard one tonight that bluebirds, need them for their own nutrition and their baby birds, and just about every baby bird needs insects. So think of them as bird food, and it change your outlook on them a bit. I would encourage you to visit our Facebook page. We keep that very current with our events and offerings. And I do, want to apologize to Dania. I misspoke about the I Spies. We're not having the in-person I Spies, but Dania and a few other team members will be posting events and activities, that you can partake in as individuals and families. And we encourage you to check that out. And like I said, our other social media, Instagram, Twitter, and our webpage, charlottewildlife.org. So thank you very much, and hope you all have a great night.
Thank you.